Hello, I'm Doug Marshall. Today I'm reconnecting with Dan Zugell to get some insights into employee stock ownership plans. Dan is a wealth of information when it comes to ESOPs, and our 10-minute talk was not near enough to cover everything, but it was a great start.
Dan, good to see you. It's been far too long that you and I have talked,
It has been.
it's about time. So
It is. Good to see
Dan, we're going to talk today about ESOPs and what they are. And you are certainly an expert in this particular field. You have a lot of experience. So I think that to start off with, when people talk about ESOPs and we have discussions about them with business owners, I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about what they really are and what they really do. So if you give an intro talk on what does it do, what's it good for, what's it not good for, how do you describe an ESOP?
Yeah, good question. And you're right, there are a lot of misconceptions out there. I start off by saying the ESOP is a retirement plan. And with retirement plans come some tax advantages, as we know, to the sponsoring company and an ESOP to the selling shareholder. This qualified plan has one investment, whereas we all know 401ks that you defer money, company matches, and you get to put it and place it in different mutual funds that are available under your plan. In an ESOP, this retirement plan uses the money it gets to buy one stock, and that's stock of the sponsoring company. And the employees are given that stock over a period of a couple decades, maybe 20, 30, 40 years. And the company uses that as a recruiting tool, a retention tool. Hey, stick around, work hard with us. Don't go somewhere else. Bring your hardworking friends and family, work here. We're handing out stock for the next 30 years. This is a great place to work. And because it's a retirement plan, there's a lot of tax advantages that are afforded both the selling shareholder, the company, and the employees.
So let's break that down into what are the benefits for the selling shareholder, and then some additional benefits for the employees and maybe risks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's several major tax advantages to ESOPs. The first is the old school one. It's been around since pretty much 1974 when current ESOPs were codified under ERISA. It says if you're an owner of a C corporation, and remember these ESOP rules were made when almost every company was a C corp. S corps can certainly do an ESOP, and you got to be one of the two. But for some that are still C corps or a company willing to convert to a C corp, the selling shareholder, if they sell their stock to an ESOP of the C corp, they can indefinitely defer and then eliminate the capital gains tax that's normally due. Pretty big deal. It's called 1042 or 1042. It's kind of like a 1031 real estate exchange that a lot of people know about. You have an old land, you sell it and buy another piece of land, you can defer the gain on that. Your tax basis of the original land might be zero, is the basis of this brand new land you just bought. Same thing with 1035, which is a life insurance provision. You have an old policy and you sell it and buy a new, better policy with better bells and whistles. Your basis travels with that and you don't pay a tax on any gain. And 1042, 1031, 1035, 1042 is the same provision basically for ESOPs. You sell your stock to an ESOP of a C corp, you can defer and then eliminate the capital gains tax. Pretty cool. However, most companies are S corps these days, or a pass-through of some sort. So what's that tax advantage? Well, that tax advantage is kind of the driver of modern ESOPs, frankly, because to the extent a company is 100% an ESOP-owned company, and let's say 100% because 75 to 80% of the companies that do ESOPs go 100% from the get-go. If you're a 100% ESOP-owned company, the profits cease to be taxable. Literally, the taxes go away on the profits of the company. And it's a quite simple mechanism because as a pass-through entity that most people know about, the taxes that the profits of the company get, the taxation of such gets passed on to the individual shareholders, usually with a K1. So if I own 40% of a company and my company earned $1 million, I have to pay tax on 40% of the profit of the company, right? And I take distributions from my company so I can pay my tax. And the companies do that every day. So you earn a profit, you file a 1040, you take your distributions from your company to pay your tax. The mechanism is the ESOP's a qualified retirement plan. It doesn't pay tax. Your 401k doesn't pay tax. And so therefore, the K1, the tax form goes to an ESOP, and doesn't pay tax, and the money stays at the company because they don't need to declare distributions anymore, we use that money to pay off the loans we incurred to buy the stock. That's incredible tax advantages. And there's some other ones along the way that we point out in estate planning and charitable giving and things like that, but those are for another day.
So that's probably where the ownership gets pretty excited about the potential of doing something like that. But not every company should be doing an ESOP.
Correct.
What are some of the examples of companies that should not be doing ESOPs? They should be considering something different.
Yeah. Well, first, this might sound obvious and people laugh when I say it, but some people hate their employees. These people, they not treated me well. They wanted to unionize for the last 30 years. And the last thing in the world I want to do is give these employees shares of my company. And frankly, we hear that occasionally. Sad. We need a company that's worth 25, has 25, 30 employees or more, payroll, $1 million or $2 million of payroll. We want an adjusted EBITDA, net earnings, plus some things like depreciation, amortization, some add backs, including sometimes the seller's salary, which could be substantial. You can add that back to normalize EBITDA or net earnings plus the adjustments. You need that around $2 million of adjusted EBITDA, which equates on an average multiple about a $10 million valued company. And from there up, we've done ESOPs from 8 million to 450 million of value. So there's really no cap on size. It generally works a little better in private companies, but and just one of them, you went back, if you don't mind, we touched back on the myths. You said, like, what are the misconceptions?
Sure.
What we get hung up on is, I'm not going to get as much money for my business if I do sell to an ESOP. That's not necessarily true. ESOP's a financial buyer, just like if you wanted to buy my business, Doug. You're a financial buyer, fair market value, willing seller, willing buyer. Now, you can't compete with crazy strategic, buyers and sometimes crazy multiples out there. If they just have to have you, nobody can compete. No financial buyer can compete. ESOPs go toe to toe in value from financial buyer standpoint. The second myth is, well, if I sell more than 51, my employees are going to vote me out of a job. That's not true. The employees do not have pass-through votes. They can't call a shareholder meeting. In fact, they don't even technically own stock. They just have an interest in a trust that owns stock on their behalf. There's a trustee overseeing that does not share that information with the employees. So the inmates aren't running the asylum. I get that a lot. So and what happens to my family? Well, because of the selling shareholder still controls the board, family's still involved. It's still grandpa's picture in the foyer. It's still a family run business because the sellers might be third generation. There's still the family name on the door. They still control the board. They still make the decisions. And it's still a family business. But I love the beauty of when people say, we're just expanding our definition of family to include the hardworking employees that built this company and the ones that are going to come in the future. I think it's a beautiful way of saying that. And so those are some of the myths I do hear.
So what are some of the pros and cons from the employee standpoint?
Yeah. 99% of the time, there's not one negative to the employee. Shares are being given to the employees. Remember, we're using that tax savings to pay off the debt. So they're not contributing a nickel. They're just working. And they're being given shares over a period of years. Now, occasionally, a company will suspend the 401k match and say, look, we're giving you this huge ESOP benefit, which might be up to 25% of payroll. I mean, that's huge benefit versus a 3% match or something, right? Dollar for dollar. So it's a huge benefit. Some companies say, look, we're going to suspend the match, keep deferring. We don't necessarily recommend that. 99% of the time, they're not giving up a dang thing, nothing. The match isn't going down. They're not contributing anything. They're still getting bonuses. They're still getting their paychecks. They're not contributing anything. So the worst thing that can happen to the employee is, God forbid, the company would go out of business and their stock would be worth zero. I've never had that happen in my 24 years because guess what? Companies that aren't paying tax tend to stick around a little longer. A little stronger of a company, right? And so that's the worst thing that could happen if the company went bankrupt and they don't have any benefit at all. I never hear of that. So I guess in theory, it could happen.
So let's end with this. So I'm sure you're contacted all the time from people who are curious about, should I do an ESOP or not? What does the first meeting look like? How long does that take? Just describe that a little bit.
Yeah, I have a real nice introduction to ESOPs that I've developed over 24 years that just kind of talks about the mechanics, just what we talked about, the things that owners want to know about. What value do I get? What happens to my family? Who's in control? How do we pay for this? What are the tax advantages? What's the structure? Kind of the basic things. How's this different than the other type sales? And that sounds too good to be true. And I explain why the government likes it, because people keep their jobs, they earn more, they have a healthier retirement benefit. Here's a simple fact, and we go through this too, that in the average retirement plan balance of an employee at an ESOP firm, the average total retirement balance is 2.5 times the average retirement balance of the same employee at the same company without a 401k. So an ESOP company, an employee A at an ESOP company averages 2.5 times the retirement benefit as the same virtual employee at a different company with just a 401k. It's pretty dramatic. So we just go through that ESOP introduction to the ESOP, say how it works. And if people are interested, they can come back and we'll have some more discussions.